Welcome to Idiot with a Library Card. This is my podcast. My name is Bennett. So, I hate to break it to you, I'm reading Lord of the Rings, which means there's going to be multiple shows on Lord of the Rings, I think. But I just wanted to start off, and this will be a quick one, I think. I wanted to talk about Lord of the Rings in general, just the book and sort of Tolkien's vision and what the book has become. I think it's a great book. Frankly, I think it's the best fantasy book of that genre. It dominates that genre so clearly. I can't think of one I like better. I don't read a lot of fantasy. You've noticed that the first two shows have been books from genres I generally don't read. And I find fantasy kind of weird and boring. There's something about Lord of the Rings that makes it special, which is cool. I mean, that's what it's special. It's a really good book. And there's two things I kind of want to touch on about the book. And generally the two things are the lore. And you can really get lost in Tolkien's lore because there's so much of it and he does such a good job world building. And sort of the tone of the story, what he does is there's sort of two problems with world building. You need geography and you need history. And he does both very well. The history, and you can sometimes get lost. There's some chapters that are tougher to read than others, but the way the book moves is pretty smoothly, and with the lore and the history of Middle-earth, it really does a good job sort of mixing it in a natural way. There's sometimes where, we're going to sing a song now about the ring or whatever, and you kind of go, well, great. That doesn't feel so natural. But for the most part, most of the history that is inserted in both stories, the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, is very natural and interesting. And I mean, I think there's like a 10-volume history of Middle-earth if you're that type of nerd. I am not. I really enjoy the story, but past that, I don't want to get into the mythology of the gods of Middle-earth. It's just doesn't interest me, and I think it actually cheapens the story a little bit. But the mythology of Middle-earth works itself into the story, which is great, and I really enjoy that. The second one is geography, and what's so great about both The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, if you read them together, what they do is it's like going on tour in Middle-earth, and you end up going to all these places in Middle-earth, which is cool. And again, it's done naturally. It's not, and I've read some fantasy novels where you'll get one part of the world, but it'll be from a different character's perspective, and then another part of the world where it's from a different character's perspective. For the most part here, you get one character's perspective of the whole world. You sort of get the Hobbit's view of the different parts of Middle-earth, which is good because you sort of understand that views in a story can be different, and someone could view one thing a different way. Like Sauron might view Mordor as beautiful and wonderful. I don't know if that's quite the words he would use, but he's the Dark Lord and shouldn't speak for him, I guess. But Frodo and Sam see it as dark and terrible. Mirkwood to the spiders may not be so bad, or even the elves that live there, but Bilbo sees it as, again, a dark and scary place. The forests in general in Middle-earth are seen as dark and scary places. I think having one sort of culture look at the Hobbit culture, look at the different parts of Middle-earth is really great. So this is going to be a quick episode. I just wanted to lay the groundwork for the Lord of the Rings stories that are going to be coming through. I did a 45-minute to an hour. Actually, I recorded for about an hour and did a summary of Lord of the Rings, and I don't want to do that. It's not interesting to you. I'm not that good, and I don't think you want to just hear me summarize a book you may have read or could get a summary on the internet. So I'm going to take some interesting things I find in the book and put out a few more episodes. I think next episode will not be about Lord of the Rings, and maybe even the one after that, but I think this is definitely not going to be the last Lord of the Rings episode, so just look out for that. All right, well, thanks for listening. And I also want to say, before I finish, just how I also like about this book. Wow, sounds stupid. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I know I said that was the end. It is not. Little appendix, which you will find that Lord of the Rings, if you get a good version, will have quite a few appendixes. So, worth a check there. But also the other two quick things about the book is it's a survival story, and that's the other thing I like about it. It takes them weeks to get from one place to another. It's sort of at times will brush over a few days, but it just if you can get yourself into the mindset of thinking like the characters, just they wake up in the morning, they walk all day, they take 2 quick breaks, and then they sleep. Or sometimes they flip the clock and they have to travel at night as if not to get caught, which is cool. It's interesting, and it makes the story it makes the story more impactful. You really understand the weariness and you really understand the joys of a full night's sleep, and when they can feast or get a hot meal, or when they get a few days break, and a few times in the story they get a full days or like a few weeks break. Twice specifically in the first book they stop somewhere. I mean, in Rivendell and in Lothlorien, they stop and just get like to sit and chill and get themselves back and right for a few weeks, and it's just enjoyable that way. And it's the way you should probably read this book too. I've heard the program A Bible in a Year, which sounds interesting. That's probably a good way to read the Bible, is to take little breaks. I would say if you're a big reader, and I love reading, I'm reading a book all the time. This is a good second book. This is one that you say, all right, you know what? I'm gonna read this book for 3 months, and I'm gonna get a book done in a month. And you read maybe a chapter a day or half a chapter a day, and you can it's a book you can think about for a little bit and digest, because there's so much richness in it. So I would say that even when the book gets slow, it's sometimes worth pushing through. So that's all I have today on Lord of the Rings. Again, I'm going to take my time with this book, so I may be talking about it later in the future. Thanks for listening.